Hey, what's up, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at the Nintendo eShop release of Timespinner for the Nintendo Switch, also available on the PS4, PlayStation Vita, Xbox One, Linux, PC and Steam, and Mac OS. But for this one, we'll be looking at the Nintendo Switch version. Plus, I want to give my thoughts on Nintendo's digital presentation at E3. So, when it comes to certain types of genres of games, one of the ones that I've enjoyed the most are the Metroidvania style games. This was a term that was originally started back in 1997 with the release of the classic and one of my favorite Castlevania games of all time, Castlevania Symphonies of the Night. The term came when a lot of people who played that game back in 1997 saw the comparison between the Metroid series and what Nintendo is famous for, what Super Metroid still held with very, very high regards and all. And since then, there have been several games that have followed kind of like the Metroidvania style route. Some haven't paid attention as much, and I probably should. And then there are some that I played that are not exactly as bad. For example, the Mummy Demaster, for example, was actually a good Metroidvania game, even though it was based off of the god-awful 2017 movie starring Tom Cruise, which honestly it still amazes me that a game based off of the god-awful 2017 movie is better than the movie itself. That should tell you something. Right there. So it was kind of interesting when I think a couple weeks ago it was announced that Timespinner, a game that was originally released last year, I believe, the PS4, the Vita, and coming to also on the PC, was coming to the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox One. And it was and based on what I've read and what I've heard about, it was certainly a title I wanted to try out and see for myself to see if it was enjoyable. And I will say that based on after playing a couple weeks of it and trying it out here and there, I honestly will have to say that as far as a Metroidvania style game goes, this is definitely one I like and one that would probably keep me occupied until Bloodstained Ritual of the Night comes out. So why don't we get started with our pros and cons, and we'll start off first with our pros. And the first one has to do with the visuals. While the visuals aren't necessarily mind-blowing or anything like that, I like how it has a bit of that 16-bit graphic style to it, though. It really adds a little bit of a retro style in a way, seeing certain, the water particles and so forth. In a way, the visuals kind of give off a little bit of that, in a way, Sympathy of the Night vibe to it. And that certainly is not necessarily a bad thing, as I said. Symphony of the Night is my favorite Castlevania game of all time, so I definitely like the visuals in the game. The next thing I do want to talk about is the sound and music, and the music is very good. I definitely like a lot of the tunes, whether you're in the future or in the past. There's a bit of like a time traveling and so forth. The sound and the music is definitely enjoyable, and to me, I think it's kind of memorable in a way. So sound and music, definitely like. The next thing I do want to talk about is the story, and the story evolves around supposedly a clan, and basically one of the people's family was killed when sort of the Empire attacked, and just before the Empire was killing that person was thrown, I think, back in time, and they're on a quest for revenge or trying to basically change the course of history in a way, though. It's an interesting story. It almost, to some, I don't know if maybe I'm wrong on this one, but you kind of get a little bit of a Quantum Leap vibe out of it to a certain degree and so forth. But as far as the story goes, it's interesting. So I do like the story. And last but not least is the gameplay. And as I said earlier on, the gameplay is a Metroidvania style type of a gameplay, and I certainly like that. There is sort of a little bit of a twist to this as well. Basically, your attacks are these orbs. Some of them are, most of them do melee, but some of them may have certain specials, like some orbs will shoot electricities, others would shoot fire and all. And then, of course, excuse me, then of course you have the ability based on my time with the game, to stop time. And this is kind of interesting because there are areas where you might not be able to access, and that's where the stopping the time, because when you stop time, you can sort of get on, you can step on the enemies and use that as kind of like a stepping stone to kind of reach up to out of reach places that you could normally not reach if you did not have this type of power. You also unlock other powers as well, such as the ability to double jump and so forth. But the gameplay mechanics are certainly interesting, and adding to it with the excellent Metroidvania style gameplay really adds a little bit. So the whole freezing time and combined with the Metroidvania style gameplay really adds, makes the gameplay very interesting and, in my opinion, fun. So as far as the gameplay goes, I like it. I especially with the Metroidvania style gameplay. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, which is the cons. And I really don't have a huge amount of cons, so I'll have to, but I do have one I can at least, as far as I'm aware of, though. Plus, I'm going to give my thoughts on Nintendo's E3 Direct, or their presentation. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of the Nintendo eShop release of Timespinner on the Nintendo Switch. As I mentioned earlier, it's also available on PS4, PlayStation Vita, Xbox One, Linux, PC, Steam, and Mac OS. Tonight I gave you the pros. I'm now going to give you the cons. And I will say, as far as cons go, I only have one, and that's really going to depend on how well you play the game. And most of this has to do is that for some out there, the game might come off as being maybe a little too easy for some. I mean, compare that to, say, The Mummy Demastered, which had a bit of a Dark Souls vibe to it. This one does come off as being maybe a little too easy. Now, some of that could be maybe because I played a lot of it, or I've played these type of games before, or I leveled my character up to the point where I don't have to worry about them losing as much health. So either way, though, but for some, though, some might find the game not very challenging, or might find it a little bit too easy. I still think the game is fun, I still think it's enjoyable, but I can understand how some might find the game a little too easy. But for me, that's really the only con I can really think of as far as for Timespinner, to be exact. Overall, Timespinner is definitely a fun game. It's the classic Metroidvania 2D style that I definitely like the most, definitely enjoy. And if you're into those Metroidvania style type of game, I would say give Timespinner a shot. As far as which platform to pick it up on, well, that will depend on what your platform choice is. Obviously, mine is the Nintendo Switch. I'm a longtime Nintendo fan. But of course, if you have a PS4 or a Vita or Xbox One, or if you use Linux, or if you game on the computer, whether it's PC, Steam, or on Mac, though, it's worth trying Timespinner out. Plus, it's something to keep you occupied until Bloodstained Ritual of the Night that comes out a little bit later this month. So overall, for those who want their Metroidvania fix right now, though, I would say give Timespinner a shot. Okay, before I conclude this video, I want to talk about Nintendo's presentation at E3. And boy, was that definitely a presentation, to be exact. This, to me, was definitely an improvement from last year's. Last year's E3 presentation from Nintendo, I thought, well, it wasn't their worst, but it wasn't their best. Mostly because unless you were a die-hard Super Smash Bros. Fan, then that presentation did not interest you at all. I mean, yeah, they had some neat announcements, Damien X Machina, and of course, Fire Emblem Three Houses, but other than that, the main focus was obviously Super Smash Bros., and not everyone was a fan of that. This year, they came out swinging. They really showed a lot of games. Now, obviously, in my last video, I mentioned some of the games, though. Damien X Machina, Astro Chain, No More Heroes 3, and of course, Let's see, what No More Heroes 3, and of course, The Witcher 3, which still blows my mind that that game is coming to the Nintendo Switch. I mean, the rumors were out there. I did not want to know. I was taking it with a grain of salt until there was an official confirmation, and this direct made that official confirmation. As far as some of the other games they showed, well, oh, and the Dragon Quest as well. There were some definitely good ones that I'm looking forward to. Luigi Mansion 3 is definitely up on my list, though. I always thought Luigi Mansion was kind of like a cross between Resident Evil and Ghostbusters in a way, though. And, well, I'm not the hugest fan of Luigi's Mansion, but I definitely have enjoyed the game, including Dark Moon on the 3DS and the odd arcade game they had at my local Dave & Buster's as well. So this is definitely one I'm keeping an eye out for. I'm glad this one's coming out as well. Link's Awakening, a remake of the classic Game Boy version, that's definitely on my list as well. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, obviously. Animal Crossing, I'm not a really big Animal Crossing fan though, but it's definitely one I want to keep an eye out for. I know some people are disappointed that the game has been delayed till next year, and while that is somewhat of a disappointment though, you know what? I would say if they need to take their time to iron out some things, I think that's fine. I'm glad that they're ironing it out though. We also saw, I think, the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. Not sure about that one, to be exact. The one from Netflix, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the big one for those are Smash Brothers, and a little bit update on Pokemon Sword and Shield. While I was worried about those games dominating the entire Direct, though it obviously didn't, but we did get some new information from Smash Brothers, such as the fact that the heroes from the Dragon Quest series are coming in to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and of course, Banjo-Kazooie is coming to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Fingers crossed that hopefully one day we'll get maybe a Banjo-Kazooie game for the Nintendo Switch. I know that seems impossible, but with Microsoft and Nintendo kind of warming up lately, I would say that's certainly not out of the realms of possibility, or at least Rare's Replay coming to the Nintendo Switch. Speaking of Microsoft, we learned that a port or an updated version of Super Lucky Tail will be coming to the Nintendo Switch based on this presentation they showed at E3, now known as New Super Lucky Tail. Of course, a little bit more information about Pokemon Sword and Shield, although not a whole lot because they didn't want to, obviously Pokemon Sword and Shield had their own Direct, to be exact, although some people are now calling this the most hated Pokemon game because of some sort of decision like you can't transfer certain Pokemons over. Honestly, I'm not losing sleep over it, but then again, I'm not really a huge Pokemon fan, though. Let's see, what else? Obviously, we talked about Daemon X Machina and Astro Chain. Those are definitely high on my list. Some of the other games, like the Collection of Mana, Trial of Mana, I mentioned that. The big one for me that kind of stuck out the most, that really stuck out, were a couple of them. Obviously, I mentioned The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Another one was, of course, Alien Isolation from Sega was coming to Nintendo Switch, which is kind of interesting because while that game got praised by a lot of people, it, at least according to Sega, it did not perform as well as they hoped for. I think some of it was probably because it came off, people were still felt burned about what happened with Alien Colonial Marines, although I think a good chunk of that blame does fall on Gearbox and, of course, Randy Pitchford, to be exact. We'll see if it does well, if it does better on the Nintendo Switch or not. So there was Witcher 3, Alien's Isolation, and the big one for me, though, is at the end of the presentation, they talked about a sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's right, they are in development, and they had something to show, although it was probably just a cutscene and all. that they are working on an actual sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And when I saw the trailer, it definitely was like, yeah. I mean, that's definitely a game I'm looking forward to playing when it comes out. Although there still is a lot of questions that have to be asked. And we did get some information, though. One we did hear is that supposedly this one could be darker than Majora's Mask, which would be very interesting if they do that, though. Because to me, Majora's Mask still remains one of my favorite Zelda entries of all time, with Breath of the Wild in second place. And I always felt Majora's Mask was one of the most darkest Zelda games ever. So I'm curious to see how they would make this one, make it, quote, darker than Majora's Mask. The other thing we saw that kind of raised some questions is what role will Princess Zelda play? I mean, is she going to actually be playable? Could we have a Zelda game where we actually are going to play as Princess Zelda? And in an odd theory, though, is this, and if we are playing as Princess Zelda in the game, or if there's going to be certain points where we play as Princess Zelda, could we have, say, and I know this is probably just a long shot, and I'm not sure if they'll do this, could we have a situation where this could be a Zelda game where there's a 2-player co-op or anything like that? Don't know if they'll do that or not, but that would be kind of interesting if they do. Things that I would like to see as far as different in this sequel of Breath of the Wild is, I like the open world approach and all that, but a couple of changes I would say would be your better, improvement with the weapon systems, make the weapons last longer, or be able to, say, break the weapons down into materials that can be used to create new stuff or sell some stuff, to be exact. I like the idea of going anywhere you want to, but I think they could at least maybe improve the stamina meter a little bit, make it a little bit easier in terms of going everywhere, go anywhere you want to, or at least maybe make gear or something like that to make it easier to, say, climb, so when it's raining you don't have to deal with that. And while I like the idea of the shrines and everything in Breath of the Wild, I wish they brought back, the pieces of heart and all that stuff, rather than going to collect 4 tokens from a shrine and you have to choose between increasing your stamina or your heart or your heart. So I do think they could make some adjustments to that, but overall I still enjoy Breath of the Wild, but I would like to see some adjustments. But yeah, that was probably that was one of the biggest shockers about that, hearing that they are doing a actual sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Here's to hoping it truly takes advantage of the Nintendo Switch. I understand the first one was developed for the Wii U before being ported over to the Switch, and I understand they may be just reusing assets, but I hope this time around they build it from the or at least build it from the ground up, or most of it from the ground up, taking full advantage of the Nintendo Switch. But my overall take from Nintendo's presentation this year was, this was a really, really good presentation, and there's certainly a lot of games to look forward to playing, though. And of course, obviously, the big shockers were, for me though at least, Witcher 3 coming to the Nintendo Switch, Alien Isolation coming to the Nintendo Switch, and the fact that a Breath of the Wild sequel is in development, though. Hopefully that game hopefully don't run into the same problem like what we saw with Metroid Prime 4, which I will say, if there was a disappointment, I would say for this Direct, it would be, I wish they announced Metroid Prime Trilogy, or I wish we saw Bayonetta 3 and so forth. But other than that, though, I didn't come away disappointed. I came away very pleased, and like I said, this was probably one of their best directs that they have done, and this was definitely a really good E3 digital presentation. I can see why a lot of people thought Nintendo, along with I think Square Enix and CD Projekt Red, but why they think Nintendo won E3 2019. Excuse me. Okay, this concludes my video review of Timespinner for the Nintendo Switch, and my thoughts on Nintendo's presentation at E3 2019. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Timespinner? Are you enjoying the game at all? Is this a game worth picking up for the Nintendo Switch, or is it worth picking up on the other systems that I mentioned, like PS4, Vita, Xbox One, Linux, PC, Steam, Mac OS? Though, are Metroidvania style type of games in any way interest you, or they don't interest you at all? And what did you thoughts about Nintendo's E3 Direct, or their digital presentation? Do you think this was a really good Direct? Did it live up to your expectations? Did it not live up to your expectations? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think, and I hope you hit that like button. I would appreciate it, and I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, wish you all a good day then. Bye!